Working on a farm up at the crack of dawn. Jump out of bed, get your overalls on, grab a slice of toast and whistle for the dawn.
So I'm over getting some straw here. Louise rang me last night and said it was ready, so the big trailer's on and Frankie's loading up here. So I think 3's all we'll risk, because they're the big 8x4x4s. Now, the other day I had 4 missed calls on my phone. So I rang the person straight back and said, "It's okay, Ivan, we got sorted out. There was a drone flying just about 30 foot above our dwelling house and it hovered there for a long time. But it ended up that it was a Queen's University person doing some sort of project. So you would think that people would have good manners and go and rap the door before they do that. That's the farmer's code. So any of these videos that you're seeing here that I put up, I have always asked permission before I fly over the place or tramp across it or whatever. And that's the best policy. That's the country code. So when you're seeing some of these lovely places that I'm filming, if you're near them or going over them, make sure you get permission first. It's a good way of keeping the air clear between everybody, because there'd be cattle in fields or gates left open, and cattle get out and onto the road or whatever and cause an accident and get the farmer's hackles up, and you don't want that. So as a girl in Portavogie told me, a saying of her father's was, "A was lay a gate the way you fun it." In other words, leave a gate the way you found it, open or shut. Now let's take a trip over to South Island at Greyabbey and see what's going on with the McAvoys. Here we go. Robin, how many generations of the McAvoys have farmed here?
Well, we were talking about it the other day. Probably Afric would be 7th generation. I would be 6th, obviously. It all started off probably in the mid-1800s. There was 2 old men lived in the cottage in mid-island, and our ancestor came down to look after them, and that started the whole thing off, the McAvoys on mid-island. Now, we have only ever been tenant farmers on the islands, so it's probably quite a record that the time that we've been involved. Originally the islands would have been owned by the Montgomery family in Greyabbey, and then as time went on, the National Trust took over the running of the islands, and it's pretty much a nature reserve now. It's part of the ASSI on the loch, so the fact that we're standing on an island with barley on it now is part of the management with the National Trust. They always are trying to encourage wildlife and birds to the loch, and they need stubble in the winter for a bit of habitat. So
you're providing the stubble?
We do. We provide the stubble happily, and the byproduct is hopefully a bit of feeding barley and a bit of barley straw. So we're at the mercy of Mother Nature, and that the tide ebbs and flows twice a day, and we have to stick to that. There's no negotiation. When the tide's on its way in, sometimes you're rushing to get a bit of work finished. Just in the spring, John Kennedy was sowing the barley here, and there's a lovely photograph of John given the 7740 a paddle across the Rhone because he was cutting it a bit fine with the tide. Yeah, we're pretty much at the mercy of of time and tide. As well as the access and the tide being limited, giving us limitations, there's also environmental policies the National Trust would stick to and have us stick to.
Yeah, the National Trust with their policy for letting sort of go back to next to organic farming near enough. We're not allowed to spray any of the weeds or use herbicides, along them sorts of lines, and we can't ring feed cattle out here with silage during the winter. We can only use haylage or hay, and well, it sort of goes round in a circle, doesn't it? Because the barley that's cut here, it's rolled, and then would feed it back to the heifers that would be kept out here, or the dry cows if they need it. So sort of circle of life, like, isn't it? Back to where it belongs.
Keeps it local. No toxic mileage involved.
Back, 3 miles up the road and then 3 miles back?
Yeah. Yeah, once we get the barley straw baled off, hopefully this afternoon, even then, within the next week or 10 days, we'll be bringing dry cows. That's in calf cows that haven't calved yet. So we'll be bringing them down to spend a few months here on the islands beside the seaside before they come to their time to calve. It's a brilliant environment for cattle. They thrive down here. They're getting herbs and flora and the grazing that they wouldn't get at home.
And just looking over your shoulder there, I think the tide's coming in, so it's against us. We go and get the baler on and bring her down.
It never changes. So
No.
I better leave you to it.
You're under pressure.
I'm going to go and get a baler.
So at the moment, we're watching the straw being rowed up on South Island, just outside Greyabbey, and that's Newtonards in the distance, and Scrabo Tower. This is South Island. That's Mid Island, where the farm dwellings on, and that is North Island over there with the trees on it. And this is Greyabbey village in the background. Now it's lovely to see the woman involved in agriculture too, very much focused on men, a lot of this, apart from Barbara and myself. It's amazing the makeup of the soil here, all the shells in it. Of course, we're really literally on the beach.
Well, we're now standing in front of, I suppose, what could be described as the McAvoy ancestral home, the wee cottage behind us. We live 2 or 3 miles up across country on what we call the hill, which was purchased by my grandfather, Peary. And Peary was born in the cottage here and decided to buy his own place, as I say, up into the peninsula or on the peninsula. So I'm hoping Afric here takes a great interest. She's going to be the 7th generation.
I'd say my cousins and David and Rory'd be fairly interested, and Chloe and Tom taking interest in it, and there's a real connection, you know, growing up down this way and just messing about whenever you're no age. Like, I doubt it'll ever be out of the names. Well,
I hope so.
yeah, hoping, like, I'll never let it go, but we'll see.